Welcome to r/Am I the Jerk, where OP's girlfriend of 5 years decides to ghost him. My girlfriend of 5 years broke up with me and ghosted me for no reason. Am I wrong for throwing away all of her stuff? So my girlfriend, 25 female, and I, 25 male, were in a relationship for the last 5 years. Last week, she texted me that we were done, and that was her last message before she blocked me. She gave me no heads up. I was planning on proposing to her just next month. Her sister did reach out to me, saying it was not my fault and she understood my hurt, but that for my mental health, it was better to never contact them again, and that maybe in the future, my girlfriend might reach out to me. It's been a week now, and I'm still obviously distraught, but my girlfriend did have a lot of her stuff in my home. Would I be wrong if I just dumped it all out? That does include a lot of mementos of her deceased grandmother, who she was extremely close to. Box it up. Send a text or call the sister to come pick it up. Also inform her that you aren't ever interested in your ex reaching out to you in the future. Then go find a woman who doesn't play these kinds of games. The blocking is actually a good thing in my opinion. It's a good indicator that things are done and nothing else needs to be talked about. Move on for your own mental health, OP. Love yourself and do something nice for yourself. Update. I boxed up all my ex's stuff yesterday, drove over to her sister's house this morning, and dropped the boxes off. I got a text from her sister a couple of minutes ago where she thanked me, was sorry for what I was going through, and texted a bunch of other stuff. It was a really long text, and I couldn't bother reading past the first couple of lines. She was still typing something as I saw the 3 dots, but I couldn't be bothered anymore, so I blocked her. And so that is that. Trying to pick up the pieces and move on, I guess. Oh well. Thanks for the advice, Reddit. Going to try and move to a different state soon and start fresh. Just so you know, your previous girlfriend will hit you up because she wants to talk or clear things and may say it's for closure. It is for her, not you. Do yourself a solid and don't bother with that. I remember being ghosted like this a day after my birthday in a 6-year relationship. He was cheating on me and wanted to date guilt-free, just blocked me everywhere, and his sister wasn't kind enough to let me know. She blocked me as well, so I get how OP feels. My former spouse did this, made an announcement that he was divorcing me and walked out. After 20 years of being married, refused any communication. I even had to file for my own surprise divorce because he couldn't be bothered to acknowledge my existence. My heart goes out to you, OP. Been there, and it is confusing, heartbreaking, and so deeply hurtful. My fiance and partner of 8 years just dipped out one day, nowhere to be found. Everyone advised me to give him space, not to contact him, and it was probably just cold feet. Phoned me 3 weeks later and ended it in a 1-minute hollow conversation with no explanation to why this was happening. The week before we were moving to a new place. Left all his stuff for me to move. His mom showed up at my work months later to get his items while he hid in his mom's car. That was fun. Refused to sign off on all joint items, costing me money and so much effort to get him removed. Canceling our wedding was exhausting and expensive. He came for money, but I did not. I had saved for years for our wedding. It left me with $500 to my name at the time. Less than a year later, he was married to his friend, who I had felt uncomfortable with, and we had arguments over. Shocker. Always wondered what story they told at their wedding. He thankfully left our dog, who eventually introduced me to my husband. So that was a win. 2 kids later, and I'm thankful my life did not go that way. Still, Brad, I hope you step on a Lego in the middle of the night and your socks remain forever smelly and damp wherever you are. Am I the jerk for not letting my wife hijack a free vacation? I'm 39, male. One of my hobbies is entering raffles, sweepstakes, radio contests, etc. I've won tickets to concerts, sporting events, some household items, gift cards, but never a grand prize like a car or a vacation. Until last month when I won a free trip for 4 people to Florida for 5 nights. Obviously, I was super excited and I told my wife, who's 38, about it right away. After our initial excitement wore off and we started talking about details, it became apparent we had conflicting ideas about this trip. Before I could even make suggestions about what I want this trip to be, my wife brought up how excited her 11-year-old daughter would be and how we could go to Disney, SeaWorld, etc. She then said that we can bring her mom with us to help watch her daughter so that we could have some time for ourselves. She was so excited about it and was getting wrapped up in planning things without even hearing what I wanted. I told her that all of that sounds like fun, but I was thinking that we could invite another couple and have it be the four of us instead of bringing my stepdaughter and mother-in-law with us. She did not like my idea one bit and told me that she wouldn't feel right taking a free trip like that and leaving her daughter behind. She also said that her mom has never been to Florida and this would be a perfect opportunity for her to go there. We argued back and forth a little bit before deciding to take a break and come back to it before telling anyone about it. Well, that lasted about 24 hours before my wife let it slip to her daughter that I had won a trip. So of course, stepdaughter immediately got excited about it and started looking into all the things she wants to do. I asked my wife why she told her daughter and she said it was an accident, which, come on. It started a fight between us and emotions got a little high. I told her she was wrong to bring her daughter into this after we agreed to wait and that I never agreed to take stepdaughter or mother-in-law on this trip. I told her that I was the one who won the trip and she was acting like this was something specifically for her. She told me I was being selfish and that we should include those closest to us in something like this, especially when neither stepdaughter or mother-in-law have ever been to Florida. She said that bringing another couple and leaving her daughter home would be cruel, especially now that she's so excited about it. I told her that her daughter is only excited about it because she decided to blab to her about it instead of waiting like we had agreed to. I told her if she wants to bring her daughter and mother-in-law, then she can also pick someone else to go with because I would rather stay home by myself than go on a vacation where I don't get to be involved in any decisions. I said that if she wants to go that route, she certainly can, but I'm not paying for any of it. We have separate finances. Now she thinks I'm being a jerk and should be happy about having a free family trip. Not the jerk. While I see both sides of the coin, what it comes down to is that you won the trip. You should get to decide how it's used. I would certainly be bummed if my spouse won a trip and then wanted to take it without me, but that's not what's happening here, and I think your wife's insistence on controlling this and her judgment of you for not having the same vision for the trip is really unfair. You aren't a bad person or a bad stepfather for wanting to take this trip with your friends. Lots of couples do this. It's not cool of her to act like you're a jerk just for having another idea. And I agree with you that it was especially out of line for her to tell her daughter, accidentally or not, about the trip because she knew that would make it harder on you. Really not cool. The one other thing that stands out to me about this is how you initially only referred to your stepdaughter as your wife's daughter, repeated references to her daughter. I wonder if there's a dynamic in play where your wife worries your stepdaughter doesn't feel like she's part of the family, or if the girl worries about losing her mom, etc. It's a stretch based on what I'm seeing, admittedly. Just thought I'd plant that seed here. That was very telling. If OP had said something along the lines of, "Stepdaughter and I get along, but just not close enough to really enjoy a 5-day vacation," or "Mother-in-law and I are not close enough where I'd be comfortable vacationing together." Both of those are extremely common. I wonder how long they've been married and what the custody situation is. Getting married to a single parent with no relationship or plan to have a relationship with the kid seems wild to me always. Agreed. It's kind of weird to want to leave the daughter out when you're married to her mom. She's 11. Mommy is going on a trip to Florida. Like, dang, you married this woman, OP. She has a kid that's not an adult. Man up. I'd offer to bring one male friend and mother-in-law can stay home. But to be honest, I wouldn't want to be the male friend in this situation. My husband and I have taken several trips without our kids. It's a great tool to keep the marriage strong. Kids can deal. You talk about your wife and her daughter. Is that not your stepdaughter? Are you not married to your wife? This whole thing reads like you're not really a part of your own family, and that's weird. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. When my ex learned to not ask me to do anything for him anymore. Backstory. I divorced my ex a little over 9 years ago after 14 years of marriage. I won't go into the specifics as to why, but suffice it to say he was a lying, cheating jerk. Even during the marriage, I tended to not be all that assertive until I finally had my fill and grew a backbone. He hated that. He did not like hearing the word no from me or in doing things my own way. So fast forward to a month after we were officially divorced. He was in his new place and I was in my house, formerly the house we shared, with our sons, but he still had a ton of his stuff there. Stuff I didn't want, even though I paid for a lot of it, but stuff I knew he really wanted. He finally reached out and demanded, not asked, demanded that I send him his stuff. Just toss it all in boxes and send it over to him. His exact words. Mind you, he was only about 10 miles away from me at that point and could have easily come over to do it himself. He didn't want to do that because he'd have to see me, something he was actively trying not to do. Cue the malicious compliance. Now, a lot of what he had were collectibles. No details, but some of it was fairly expensive and fragile. So I did as he asked. Correction, demanded. I tossed it all into numerous boxes. Now, some of the truly expensive items, I did take great care in packaging them, only because I knew my sons would probably eventually want them. But for the stuff I knew my ex really wanted and cared a lot about, nah, I just tossed it all in a box without a care in the world. Now, I did inspect everything, and while I just dumped them in boxes, nothing was damaged by me. I also took pictures of it to prove it. So once I closed them all up, I told him to either get his butt over here to pick it up or get someone to do it for him. He got someone to do it. Now, I was not at the house when this person picked everything up, but my sons and sister were. They did not know how everything was packed. They only showed him the boxes. They told me that the person who picked up the boxes quite literally just tossed them into the back of his pickup without a care in the world and then sped away. Later that night, I got a call from my ex who started calling me names for destroying all of his stuff. I told him that everything was fine before I closed the boxes up, and I had proof of it. I then said that maybe next time, be a bit nicer to me when making requests, and reminded him that he demanded I toss them all in the boxes, but he didn't tell me to be gentle in doing so. I hung up on him and proceeded to enjoy my celebratory glass of wine that evening, hoping that he was enjoying his shattered remains. My neighbor keeps going in my yard and playing with their kids without my permission. So my husband and I just bought our first home. Our sons are ages 1 and 2, and we were very excited to finally have a yard with a swing set for our boys and for our 10-year-old mini labradoodle to play. The problem is that the house didn't have a fence around the yard, so we planned on installing one in the spring since we just moved in during the winter. We also were excited to live in a neighborhood with other families so that we could all make potential friends in the neighborhood. When we moved in, not a single neighbor greeted us or welcomed us to the neighborhood. We didn't care at the time, but I feel like it should be mentioned now. Also, right behind our backyard, literally 15 feet, so close that it looks like it's touching our yard, is the back of an elementary school with a huge, new and gorgeous public playground. Yesterday, my husband and I heard screaming from our yard and noticed 2 kids and a large man were playing in our yard on and around our swing set. We had no clue who these people were in our yard, and after a long bit of time passed, we were confused why they thought it was all right to be on our property for so long without knowing us whatsoever or asking permission. We take our kids outside every day. It's nice out, so we put on our jackets and shoes to go out and speak with the random kids and the man, but they had left. Today, we see the same kids and a woman outside playing in our yard. My husband takes our dog outside to walk him and goes to speak with the woman. She tells him that she just moved from South Carolina and is the daughter-in-law of the woman who owns the house next to ours, and that her husband and kids would be staying there for a while. She said her husband grew up in the house and lived there his entire life. She says that her husband asked the previous owners of our house if they could play in our yard, and they told them that they could. In my head, I'm like, well, why does that matter if you knew that there are new owners here, which they do? My husband explains politely that we do not feel comfortable with them playing in our yard because they did so without asking us first, and because if anything happens to them while they're on our property, we would be liable in any type of lawsuit. My father is a lawyer, so we were taught all the laws around homeowning. My husband came inside after saying goodbye, and she left with her kids soon after. Next, her husband arrives home from work while my husband is going to the store. He immediately takes his kids into our backyard and plays the entire time my husband is gone. My husband comes home from the store and the neighbors leave our yard. My husband goes to take the trash out and the neighbors come back into our yard to our swing set with a large dog on a leash. My husband, not expecting another confrontation, just taking out the trash in his yard, walks up to the neighbor father and again explains that we do not feel comfortable with them playing on our property, yada yada yada. My husband also says twice in the conversation that the giant public playground is literally right behind our homes. The man says that his son is autistic, as if this is an excuse of why he takes him into our yard and not the public playground. In my head, I'm thinking, Well, sir, my son is autistic too and loves water, like is totally obsessed with it. But my husband and I do not take him into our neighbors, especially someone we have never met or taken the time to say hello to, pools without asking permission. My husband tells him that our son is autistic too, and it doesn't mean they can come with their giant dog on our property without permission. My husband comes inside, thinking he got his point across and that the man would leave. But no. Our neighbors decided, after the second conversation, to spend the next 4 hours in our backyard, going in and out of their house, then back into our yard as if it was their own. My husband and I do not know what to do in this situation, so humbly ask the opinion of the public. Honestly, if our neighbors would have introduced themselves and asked if they could play in our yard from the start, everything would have been a lot different. The reason my husband and I are so upset is because they played in our yard for long periods of time without knowing us or asking first. Then, after we nicely said we feel uncomfortable, they acted entitled to our property and playset, basically just ignored our existence, brought their huge scary-looking dog with them, and seemed to think that we were outrageously in the wrong for not thinking it was okay for them to hang out in our yard without asking. We did not go out a third time, honestly, because we do not know what the right thing to do here is. I know that legally they're in the wrong. They are trespassing on our property and should not be doing so. I personally would feel so weird as a mother taking my kids into someone else's yard to play without asking. My head would be racing because it would feel like a crime because technically it is. But if these neighbors are so insistent that what they did was perfectly fine and that my husband and I are the jerks basically, then is there some human decency, right versus wrong, common knowledge that I am unequipped with? Is it okay to play with your kids in your neighbor's yard on your neighbor's playset if you have never met your neighbor and made zero attempt of doing so or asking permission to use their property? Update. I just went to walk my dog and the neighbor was in my yard again with his kids and his big scary dog. His dog immediately started barking and growling towards my dog as my dog did his business. I thought to myself, why should my dog, who is still getting used to his new yard, have a stranger and his giant dog, 4 times the size of mine, just chilling in our yard? So I put my phone on record in my pocket and walked towards them with my dog. The entire time his dog was freaking out as we approached them, so I stayed about 10 feet away and said, "Hi." The man didn't look at me. He just held both his hands on his dog and looked annoyed that I was interrupting them in my backyard. I said my name and that I was the homeowner, and he still did not look at me. I asked nicely if they would stop trespassing in our yard. The man just said, "Yeah." So I said, "Thank you, we would really appreciate it." At that point, his dog lunged at mine, and my dog pulled away and managed to pull his head out of his collar. The man's dog went for my dog, so the man grabbed his dog with both hands, and I scooped up and held my 25-pound Labradoodle. I said that this was one of the many reasons why they should not be trespassing in our yard with their giant dog. The man said, "I heard you the first time," and I walked towards my home to get my dog inside. At this point, I'm highly regretting taking him out there to begin with. Dog mom fail. But then again, it is my own backyard. I'm also thinking, dude, you clearly didn't hear us the first time because this is the third time. Once I got inside, I looked out the window and they left my yard. I have the recording of our conversation just in case anything else happens. Call your local police station and ask what the process there is to have them officially trespassed. At a previous home, I had to give the man a verbal, "You are not welcome here." After that, he could be ticketed and arrested. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or their neighbor? Please let us know. If you let entitled people walk all over you, they'll never stop. My daughter, who's 25, is obsessed with a blanket. I finally gave her a piece of my mind. I'll try and keep this short. I, 50, have a daughter who's 25. Recently, her boyfriend, who's 27, knitted her a blanket with her name knitted on it, and it doesn't look the best. But for some reason, my daughter loves it, and whenever I'm visiting her apartment, she almost always has it on her when she's sitting on her couch or bed. It does get really cold where we live, but the extent to which she likes this blanket is odd, as if she's a kid who's obsessed with a stuffed animal or a toy. I recently asked her about it, and she said she likes it because her boyfriend made it, and it reminds her of him since they don't live together yet, and is extremely large on her, so it's comfortable. I told her that she was acting like a kid. She said that she wasn't. I repeated that she was definitely acting like a kid, and that I found it weird. She told me she had no idea why I would find it weird, and told me to leave her alone. I told her she was being infantilized, and it was disgusting. She said that she would kick me out of her apartment if I didn't stop arguing with her, so I remained quiet. I'm starting to think I may be the jerk for accusing her and her boyfriend of such things. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. Normally, I would offer at least a brief explanation as to why I voted that way, but you just upset me. I've seen a lot of crap on this subreddit over the past few days since I started looking at it, but this is by far the craziest that I've seen. You really want a problem with your daughter over liking something her boyfriend made for her? Really? It doesn't matter that it doesn't look like a masterpiece. He made it for her, and it's special to her. It must be really sad being you. No one has ever put any effort into making you anything. That's probably for the best, because you wouldn't appreciate it anyway. Get out of here. You're the jerk. Of course you are. She's fond of a handmade gift her boyfriend gave her. There's nothing the slightest bit weird or childish about that. I'm guessing no romantic partner ever spent hours and hours making something just for you. If they had, you would understand why your daughter cherishes this blanket, even though it's not the most perfect blanket ever made. It probably took weeks to make that blanket. Someone spending that much time and effort making me something is the most special thing I can imagine. I've never had a romantic partner do that for me, but family members have, and gifts like that just have a way of making you feel so completely loved and appreciated. Of course she is attached to it and wears it all the time. Not only is it extremely practical in a cold climate, it's a physical representation of how much he loves her. You're the jerk. So you can't understand why she would really like a handmade gift her boyfriend made her? Seriously? I like having a blanket on my lap when sitting down too. I find it comforting. The only one who acted like a child here is you for even being so rude of bringing it up at her own place. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her daughter? Please let us know.
Never tell the people of Reddit that adults don't need to snuggle up with blankies. Most of the people on there are probably snuggling up with their blankies right now.
Am I the jerk for asking for normal updates from my wife? I just want to make sure she's safe. My wife and I have known each other for 20 years, dated for 7, been married for 2. We have a 16-month-old daughter together and a great marriage, generally speaking. As long as we have known each other, we trust each other without exception regarding serious things or any type of serious, life-altering bad decision that can happen to a married couple. We have silly, bickering-type disagreements, like I think most couples do, but there's never yelling, as neither of us grew up in a home where that thing was common, and we prefer to talk about what went wrong and come to a mutual agreement as to how to keep it from happening again. Anyways, there's this one issue that has been a recurring disagreement between us that I'm wondering if I'm being unreasonable and should just let it go, being the jerk for being frustrated when it happens, or if I'm justified in asking for it. The wife grew up in a home where once of age, she was allowed to go out with friends, come home whenever, and her parents did not expect any updates of any kind. I grew up with parents that also let me go out, but they wanted updates about where I was, who I was with, and when they could expect me to be home. Now, I can't get updates about anything from her as my spouse. I've told her time and time again that she can do whatever she wants, when she wants, and come home whenever she wants. I'm your husband, not your boss. All I want to know is where you are and when you think you'll be home. And when there's a chance, please let me know so I'm not at home worrying about you. But it doesn't happen. Today, she left town while I was at work, plans I was well aware of far in advance. But she did not tell me, "Okay, honey, I'm getting on the road, love you, I'll let you know when I'm there safe." She just left town and said nothing, and likely would not have said anything when she arrived. I say I deserve these minor updates. She says, "You knew I was leaving town days ago, so why do I have to tell you again when I actually go?" An important part of this rant worth noting is that I'm an ex-911 operator/police dispatcher, and I did that job for 10 years. I've heard the worst of things and know how bad it can get. So from that, anxiety stems my desire to know she's okay. We can track each other's locations through our phones for safety reasons, and we have always been able to. But again, that's not for lack of trust, it's for safety concerns. God forbid something could happen. Short of me using it to meet her outside with the baby because she gets excited when mommy gets home, it's not something I ever check. Thanks for your help. Not the jerk. You both have different ways of operating. She's very independent and not used to reporting to anyone. You did/do the check-in thing. I do think that it would be courteous to say, "I'm leaving on the road trip," and to let you know of arrival. Don't think it is required, though, to advise when one is going to the grocery store type of trip. You two need to discuss and come to an agreement, which will likely require compromises on both sides. This needs a lot of upvotes. I'm extremely independent and live alone, so when people ask me to check in, it feels infantilizing Because I'm an adult woman who has lived alone in a major city for 6 years. I can take care of myself. I don't have to do it on a regular basis, so why would I do it the few times a year when I'm around family? A lot of adult men and women who can take care of themselves and who live alone are still attacked every single day. It's not infantilizing to want to ensure someone you care about is safe. Not the jerk. I wouldn't necessarily say you're being unreasonable, but I do think you should ease up on expecting unsolicited updates. If you know she's leaving town, do you text her, "Hey, let me know when you leave or get there safe"? I'm in a relationship with uneven habits like this, and my partner is just not wired to give that kind of feedback. If I ask after it, I almost always receive an answer though, because they're considerate. If she just ignores you, that's another story. Not the jerk. Part of marriage is learning to understand and accommodate another person's communication style and needs, and what you're expecting for is well within the realm of what she should be willing to do, especially since you have a kid together. Letting the other person know where you are and when to expect you is common courtesy when you have childcare to coordinate. Obviously, she's not a monster, but she should be willing to meet you at minimum halfway there. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know.
If Reddit boy expected me to text him updates all the time, he'd need a new head.
Why would I need updates? You never leave this room.
How could you say that, Reddit boy?
Be in the conference room at the time meetings are scheduled to start. A couple decades ago, I was working as a network engineer for a consulting company. The company owner, Kim, was the best salesperson I've ever met, could sell ice to Eskimos. She had a temper, threw a shoe at me once, but great technical knowledge and knew when she didn't need something. After I'd been there a couple years, we got a new engineering manager. We all called him Jerk. Nice enough guy. It's just that around here, everyone named Richard is called Jerk. Normal company policy had always been that meetings would be announced over the intercom when they were ready to start. We had engineering meetings once a month, early morning. The next meeting was announced a little later than normal, but eventually it was announced and we all headed over. Jerk was not happy that few people were in the conference room at the time the meeting was scheduled to start. He made it crystal clear to us all that in the future, meetings would not be announced over the intercom, and he expected us all to be in the conference room at the time meetings are scheduled to start. We all knew the reason for that rule was that the owner was never ready for a meeting to start at the scheduled time. We all knew the reason for that rule was that the owner was never ready for a meeting to start at the scheduled time. She was always running late, or the previous meeting ran over, whatever. New manager flexing his authority and trying to whip us into shape with a dumb rule? Yeah, we didn't say anything. A few hours later, it's time for a meeting that actually includes the company owner. I head over to the conference room a few minutes early to find the door closed. I wait until meeting time, knock on the door, poke my head in, and ask if this was the customer meeting. The owner is like, "What? No! You know we announce meetings over the intercom. Why would you think that this was the customer meeting?" Me. Our new engineering manager announced at the engineering meeting this morning that meetings would no longer be announced over the intercom, and we were expected to be in the conference room at the time meetings are scheduled to start. I'm surprised his head didn't explode, the look she gave him. Kim. Meetings will be announced over the intercom when they are ready to start. Me. Okay, thank you. I close the door and leave. That was the one and only time he ever announced a new policy. I can do this all day. I worked in homes for disabled adults for over a decade. Every client had an ISP, individual service plan, and as a caregiver, it was our job to know what was outlined in each plan. Every year, the local baseball team hosts a night for the group homes. This was also when HR would come with any home that might need a hand. I got stuck with one of the most annoying HR people several years ago. Terry just thought she knew everything. She kept telling me I couldn't take photos of the clients. I could. We had photo permission. That one client didn't need their wheelchair to walk to the seating. They did, etc. We were seated next to another home that I used to be at, and so I helped those staff as needed, too. One client had in his plan that his socks, braces, and shoes only had to be worn in the van for safety reasons. We had worked hard with him to get him to that point. There was a lot of upset and punching involved, but we got there. Well, see, Terry thought she knew everything and insisted that this client had to have his footwear on. We kept trying to tell her that he wouldn't tolerate it. Her answer? Just do it. I'm right, you're wrong. Cue malicious compliance. Okay, bud, we have to put your footwear back on. And the other staff and I wrestled everything on. Not 5 minutes later, one shoe went sailing and landed next to Terry. Oh, bud, we can't throw our shoes. Next went the braces and the socks, which hit poor Terry in the back of the head. Soon after, while we were picking up those items, off came the other footwear, of which the shoe and the sock hit her head this time. Whoops, I know you don't like these, but we have to put them back on. Again, everything was taken off and launched. Every single thing hit Terry in the head again. I went to gather his things and said, "I am so sorry. We will get these back on ASAP." She handed them back to me and said,
Forget it. Obviously, the ISP needs to state that he can't have his footwear on. Let me make a note.
She looks at his plan, looks at us, looks at it again.
Oh, he only has to have them on in the van?
Cackles. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard.
Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.